So welcome to our second live stream, and today I'm going to be covering flexibility. By now you all know me. My name is Margaret Martin, and run this wonderful YouTube channel for all of you. And today we're going to cover flexibility because it is so critical this time of year with the cold weather that we keep ourselves safe. And one of the ways of staying safe is by staying flexible. So my goal is by the end of today's session that you understand the importance of not just why we need to stretch, but how we stretch both our muscles, our fascia, and our nerves, as well as understanding the best ways to stretch and times of the days to stretch. You guys asked so many great questions that I'll be addressing a lot of this through your questions. But before I get there, we need to just wander up the stairs to Richard's office, and he has a little bit of housekeeping to do. So Richard, I'm turning it over to you.
Hey there, Margaret. Thanks very much. Hello, everybody. Welcome to our second live stream, and I will take it from here, Margaret, and I'll bring you back in a few minutes, okay?
Thank you.
Great. Before we start, I'd like to cover a few things. The first thing is the medical advisory, so I'll read this out, and it'll only take a moment. First, this live stream and its contents do not constitute medical advice. It is for information purposes only. If you have a medical condition, you should consult with your physician or another licensed healthcare professional. Now let's talk about the agenda. Similar to what we did last time, Margaret will cover the when, why, and how of flexibility in detail for you. And after that, we'll spend the remainder of the live stream addressing questions that you provided. They fall into a number of categories, and we'll tackle them according to those categories. So we'll get to that in a few minutes, but that covers the basics. I'll be back to bring you into those questions, but also I'll give a quick run through of resources available to you, both unpaid or free and paid later in the presentation. So you'll see me shortly and look forward to certainly seeing you pretty soon. So I'm going to bring back in Margaret and let her take it to the next part, which is the when, why, and how. I'll be back shortly.
Thank you, Richard. So the first thing I'm going to invite all of you to do is to take a slow, relaxed breath with me, because this is just whatever season you celebrate, it gets to be busy this time of year. And we know that if we want to help our bodies to relax, which is really important with stretching and becoming more flexible, that we tell our body how to relax through our breath. Our body's very primitive when it comes to getting signals from our environment. And it still recognizes the signal of fight or flight that it receives by how you're breathing. And so the very first thing, if it is possible for you to breathe through your nose, then to focus on breathing through your nose more through the holiday season, but especially when you're stretching. Taking the time that you need for each breath is really important. And when I say that, we so often don't recognize our own pace of breathing. So if you even just take a moment now to just, as I'm speaking, tune into how do you take a deep breath in? Do you tend to do it through your mouth, through your nose? How long do you take to take that breath? Is there a pause between your inhale and your exhale? And even through your exhale, I want you to have that awareness, because with stretching is a wonderful, wonderful opportunity to coordinate that breath through the stretches. And so often, I would observe in my yoga students that it wasn't so much the practice that I had them do, but it was the opportunity that they had to take deep breaths and to be encouraged to breathe through the movements. And so it's little opportunities like this that I want you to give yourself. You don't have to do all your stretching all at once. And even if you don't have time to stretch through these next few weeks and months ahead that are coming, you do have the opportunity always to breathe and to help yourself decide on how you're going to breathe. So that takes us to, why would we want to work on being flexible? And just like why we would work on breathing more carefully, the number one reason for most is to be able to age well and to reduce restrictions and delay decreases in flexibility that come with aging, but that also come with a lot of holding postures. With winter, we tend to spend more time sitting, whether that's engaging with friends and family, or that's sitting watching your favorite holiday specials, or just because it's cold and the days are shorter, so you're spending more time sitting. And so we also have an accumulation of injuries that will reduce our flexibility. So these are all really important reasons for working on flexibility. Having better body mechanics is also really important if you're taking up a new sport, a hobby. If you're entering that sport with a tight spine and you've been spending a lot of time forward, then you're going to take that forwardness, whether you're on a pickleball court, my new favorite pastime, or whether you're, you have a job interview and you're greeting family, and you get up from the chair and you're saying hi to everybody, but you're going to take that posture and alignment that you've spent the most of the day in. And so coming out of it, even if you spent long periods of time sitting, coming out of it and just opening things up and stretching, even if it's just for a few seconds, will be really beneficial. But I'll talk a little bit more specifically about options of stretching. So I just want to make sure that I covered the main reasons why you should stretch, other than looking great and feeling great. All right. So the next thing people always say, well, Margaret, when is the best time to stretch? And my friends who know me well know that I like to chew gum. And so my analogy is often bubble gum. You're going, where's she going? Okay. So where I'm going with this is, if you take a piece of gum and it's just been sitting, in your cupboard for the last few weeks, and you go to take that stick of gum, and if it's cold out, that stick of gum is going to be quite hard, and you have to warm it up in your mouth and chew it before it becomes soft and pliable. Well, our muscles are very much the same. Our muscles need to be warmed up. They need to be chewed on, whether that's through massage or rolling with a foam roller or rolling with a ball. The heat on the warming of the muscle can come from an external source, be it a hot shower, a heating pad, your car seat. These are great ways to warm up muscles. But you can also warm up a muscle just through movement. And so the best time, the when of stretching, when it comes to muscles, is when that muscle has been warmed up. And sometimes the warm-up can be a type of stretching as well onto itself. And that type of stretching is referred to as active isolated stretching. But we'll go through that a little bit more in terms of understanding when to stretch a muscle in different ways. But first I want to say in terms of when, on the stretching of nerves and fascia. It's less important when it comes to nerves and fascia that you warm them up, but they do have specific ways that they like to be stretched. So we'll cover that. All right, so moving on to how do we stretch? So stretching our muscles, as I said, you have one choice, which is active isolated stretching. So let me show you as an example. I've put some color on my hand. And the reason for the color is to show you how I would be stretching the adductor, or the orange colored muscle. That's the muscle that pulls my thumb towards my index finger. My abductor muscle is the blue one. It brings the thumb away from the body. Now you'll notice, as my aging skin is very helpful here, and wrinkling as I abduct, as I'm abducting, I'm having to contract this muscle. So you see it gets kind of more crinkled, the muscle's getting tighter. But the adductor muscle, the inner one, is stretching. So what's happening when we stretch our muscles is we have filaments called actin and myosin in our muscles. And they are aligned mid-range in their resting position. But when we want to stretch a muscle, we actually end up contracting the opposite muscle. So the blue muscle would be tightening, as the orange muscle would be stretching. And it's a simple process of the actin and myosin filaments, either one end they're shortening to allow the opposite muscle to stretch. And so it's very, very important that we have this sort of programming in our body. Otherwise, every time I opened my hand, if I didn't have an opposite reflex set up in my body to provide some sort of relaxation for the opposite, I'd be constantly fighting myself. But the body will naturally, as you contract one muscle to a certain point, it will relax the opposite muscle. And I say to a certain point because then when you go too far, and if we kept stretching, the body would start to feel some discomfort and then want to fight back. So how do we work with that natural reflex that the body has? One of the ways is through our breath, and another one is to use it to our advantage. So because there's a timing thing that goes on here. So with the active isolated stretching of a muscle, you would actively stretch the muscle. So it's going to actively stretch. And then I have 1 to 2 seconds where I can take advantage of it before my body goes, hey, hang on. And so I would just take advantage of it for that 1 to 2 seconds and repeat it 10 times. So I'm going to actively stretch, and then help it along the way. I'm like, well, I'm also do both at the same time. I'm going to actively stretch, and then keep going. So whether that's the thumb muscles, whether that's the muscles around the elbow joint, whether that's the muscles around the shoulder and back, where the back muscles are opposing the chest muscles and vice versa, or whether it's your quadriceps and your hamstrings, your lower, I wouldn't say tibialis anterior, but it's not, your shin muscles and your calf muscles, they're always working in opposite forces. One is helping the other to stretch. So that's how you would do an active isolated stretch. When it comes to active isolated stretch, as I say, that movement itself is one way that you can use it as a warm-up. So it's really nicely aligned to warming up for an activity or a sport if you haven't had time to, run around a field, go for a brisk walk. So especially before starting some more aggressive activity. Trying to emulate what the body's going to need for that activity through an active isolated stretch is a really great idea. When it comes to static stretching, static stretching is a stretch where we just hold. And I would hold and hold and hold, and I would hold for 30 seconds up to several minutes. Our muscles quite enjoy static stretching. Our fascia needs it. When it's static, the muscles will start to gain some benefit after 30 seconds. The fascia needs at least 2 minutes before it gains that benefit. It will then start to release and open after 3 minutes, 4 minutes, 5 minutes, all depending on the restriction, on the level of hydration, on the trauma that the fascia has felt. Unlike the muscle, it's not so easy to describe to the fascia, but I know you've all felt it or seen it. So if you've ever taken a breast of chicken and you've separated the space between the skin and the breast of the chicken itself, and you put your hand in that little space, whether you're going to do stuffing or something, you feel like little spider webs. And that is the fascia binding between the skin and the muscle of the breast. Now, then when you have just a breast of chicken, you'll see a thin white filament over that breast of chicken. And that's also another layer of fascia. For vegetarians out there, I'll give you a healthier analogy. Think of an orange. And the oranges are a great way to see how important hydration is to our fascia. When you have a fresh orange, you could barely see that white fibrousy lining of the orange that you have. You'll peel it and you have like another layer, and that's the fascia of the orange drying up. A fresh orange, you could just barely feel it. And then when you start to separate the segments, whether it's fresh or old, you will actually always be able to separate the segments because each segment is so beautifully separated by its own fascia. And then, if you took a bite of the orange, even more beautiful, you see each little cell of the orange has its own fascia. And within our body, our muscles have fascia, our nerves, all our organs have fascia. And so we have this beautiful system lying within us. And so if you've been unsuccessful stretching your muscles, then it might be that you either need to stretch your fascia first. So think about that lining over the chicken breast. If you had a tight lining over an old injured muscle, and all you did is try to stretch what was inside that tight lining, then you'll never be able to access and free it up. But if you can stretch the fascia first and maintain that stretch for the length that it takes to release the fascia, then you will then be stretching, have an opportunity to stretch that muscle. It will get to release simultaneously usually. So hopefully that gives you a sense. You don't actually have to change your stretch, but the intensity of the stretch needs to be lower. So I should have spoken about intensity when it comes to muscles, because so many people beat themselves up when it comes to stretching. The body is going to go into fight or flight if you cause it harm, just like it will when you do, if you're uncomfortable, you're not going to breathe in a nice, slow, relaxed manner because it's hurting. And so in order to stretch the muscle, you want it to be an intensity that feels just right. That Goldilocks chair in the middle. You don't want it to be like, no, I don't really feel that stretch at all. And you don't want it to be like, oh my gosh, that's, I need to back off because I'm feeling too much tension here. You don't want that either. But you want it to be like a 5 or 6. You go, that's a nice stretch. That feels good. That's a nice response for a muscle when you're looking to, am I doing this at the right intensity to make the gains that I would like to make? But when it comes to your fascia, because you're going to be holding it so much longer, you want that intensity to be lower, closer to a 4. And if it starts to go closer to a 3, then you would just go a little bit deeper into the stretch. What am I meaning by that? So as an example, if you are doing a hamstring stretch, because most of you can relate to a hamstring stretch, and you're laying on your back, you're supported, and your leg is up the wall. So you have your leg up the wall, and you're just feeling a nice stretch in the back of your thigh, and you go, okay, this feels really good. After 2 minutes, you go, I don't really feel it very much anymore. That 4 has gone down to a 3 or even a 2. Then you scooch a little bit closer to the wall to get a deeper stretch. Or if you're already at the wall, then you put a pillow behind your ankle to get a deeper stretch so that you can hold a fascial stretch. It should be in a very supportive environment at all times. So the body, again, feels relaxed and in control. Now, when it comes to nerves, I promised you I'd tell you how we stretch nerves. There's, so much about nerve stretching. There are books dedicated to stretching the nervous system. But in a nutshell, it does not like stretches the way muscles or fascia do. The closest stretch that it comes to is the active isolated stretch, the one where we open and close and actively open and close. So when we are stretching and we feel like little zinging pains, or we've had injuries that we go, they just aren't responding to stretching, it might be that you're not doing the right stretch, be it fascial or nerve. And then it's really important to work with the therapist because every nerve has its own pathway. And so if I wanted to stretch a nerve, the median nerve that went down into my thumb, I wouldn't get a very good stretch if I brought my arm up like this or even behind my back. But I would get a great stretch for that nerve if I brought it out like this and here, because some brilliant individual, dissected the body and went, okay, let's follow that nerve down the arm, through the armpit, all the way down to the finger and go, if this person's had trauma and cut their hand years ago, and we need to mobilize that nerve and reduce any restrictions around that nerve, well, we're working towards this ultimately, but we have to do it in a very special way that allows, and this is sort of an example, but it's so important and really, really helpful to work with a therapist that can guide you specifically on that. So that's, in a nutshell, how to stretch nerves, muscle, and fascia. But I did notice that a few questions came in, and I just want to address that in regards to specific fascial stretching around our organs. People asked about their stomach and about their colon, and there is a whole world of what they call visceral manipulation. I've taken a few courses, but I am by no means an expert on it. But the fascia covering every single one of our organs has its own best way of being released. Every organ in our body has its own rhythm, its own movement pattern, and so people that spend, weeks upon weeks, training and studying this, they will go through a school called the Burrell Institute, and they're learning visceral manipulation. And so if you have had a lot of abdominal surgeries, if you know that you have health restrictions that are being impeded or created, your health restrictions are created because of organ dysfunction, that is always an option for you to explore. And so the Burrell Institute does have a list of practitioners, but also when you're, in your, the professionals that you deal with, massage therapists, physical therapists, osteopath, they have this, you can specifically ask, do you do visceral manipulation? And they would be able to help guide you through special stretches, I guess you can call it, for ensuring that those tissues in your body also get to be stretched and feel healthier. So I think that's what I wanted you to learn about stretching. Just maybe one more thing before I hand it over to Richard for questions. How am I doing? Oh my goodness, okay. He said I needed to go slower and breathe. So sorry, I am going slower and breathing more, but it's taking longer. So the one thing when people do a muscle stretch is sometimes they'll get a muscle ache. And just like I said, that's normal. Because if you're not used to doing this motion with your thumb, then that muscle might cramp while you're doing the stretch for the opposite muscle, be it in your hand or toes or anywhere in your body. That's one thing. And then that cramping is also, so the muscle ache or the cramping is caused just because mainly you haven't taken it through that range of motion in a long time. And for many, many people, magnesium deficiency is a bit of an issue in our society. So, speaking to your pharmacist about possibly taking a magnesium supplement based on your current pharmaceuticals that you might be taking or other supplements, and seeing if that helps you. An Epsom salts bath is also a great way of getting it absorbed through your skin, as well as local magnesium lotions if you have certain muscles that tend to cramp every time you try to stretch them. All right, so I know you guys have tons of questions, and I'm handing it over to Richard so he can start asking them.
Hey there.
Sorry.
Yeah, no problem. Now, you can go take a stretch break if you want.
Okay.
Okay. I'll take it here for a few minutes just to give you a little break. So we'll see you in a few minutes. Okay, so Margaret did ask me to cover one quick topic, which is when not to stretch, under what circumstances. And so there are 3 circumstances that she identified or have been identified. So I just want to bring those up. The first one is if you've had a fracture, and certainly not to do a stretch directly in that area until it gets to heal time. And also, when there's acute inflammation or infection in a specific area, you don't want to stretch that area. That's number 2. And the third one is when stretching causes pain. It shouldn't lead to pain. And so in each of these conditions, just again, you should really get the clearance of your healthcare professional, whether it be your physician or it's your physical therapist, whoever is appropriate, to, if you're under either of those circumstances, to do your stretching. So just some bit of a heads up there. So, okay. So I actually want to spend 1 or 2 minutes because people do ask this, and we tend to put out a lot of information for people, maybe sometimes too much. And I thought what I would do is I'm just going to turn this off, close that off. So open my screen up, and I will do a share screen so I can walk you through the various resources that are available to you, our readers and followers. And so let me just bring that up. And what you see here is on one source of information, if you're looking for anything on stretching or any other topic, obviously, but we'll just talk stretching today, is Margaret's channel or YouTube channel. And you're on that now, so you should know your way to find that. And I would suggest you, over here, you see the little thing here. You can go to the search, but before I do that, if you click on the videos, you get the full video library. And I think there's 500 and so videos there. And if you're looking for a specific topic, just click on the search there. Don't go to the search on YouTube because it'll go all over YouTube. But if you do it in that little box there, it's confined and constrained specifically to what's on this channel, which is where we would like you to be. And so if you do a search on stretching, get the word stretch and return, things will come up like 4 daily stretches. Obviously, it's pretty popular. It's had almost 600,000 views, so it's pretty popular with people. And that has different stretches in there, including, I think, a hip stretch, I believe, also. So that's pretty popular, as well as our bedtime stretches. And there are some playlists that come up here. So that is one source of information, our YouTube channel. The second is, and this is obviously all free, if you feel you want to do it and be ad-free and access to your own information, you can go to our website and under learn.milieuguide.com. Many of you have gone there and bought some of our courses or workouts or different assets up there. And up here is balance and flexibility. You can either get it down here. I group them together, and you view the products. If you click in there, we do have a flexibility workout, which is there's a question someone brought up to us about that, which I'll bring up in the Q&A. So again, another thing, and that's for purchase. So you can purchase that, and then you have access as long as you want, as frequently as you want, at any time you want, to these stretching workouts. And so that's another thing. And then, of course, there's our website. By the way, our website is going to go through a big change in the next couple of months. We're doing a complete redesign. We have a team working on that. So stay tuned for that. And we know we have issues in terms of finding your way around it. And we apologize for that, but we're going to have that fixed and a better experience for you. And then finally, we always encourage people to look at Margaret's book on Amazon, which is Exercise for Better Bones. She has 3 books. She has Yoga for Better Bones, which we'll reference. So we have Exercise for Better Bones and a core book. And that has flexibility exercises in it too, as part of the Exercise for Better Bones program. And again, we have resources on our website to support the book. So we try to provide as much information as economically as possible to you. So that covers those key things. So I think I've kind of covered that. Yeah. The final thing is in the description box for this session, I put in a number of links to different assets, including some of these. And we will add in some more as they come up. So feel free to come back. The session is live and recorded and will be posted. So you can come back and look at it anytime you want. If there's things that you want to kind of, in Margaret's lecture or discussion you want to cover, you can go back and do those. So that covers that. I think now what we're going to do, I'm just going to close this and get rid of this. And it's just me. And so now it's time to get into the questions. We've had a lot of questions, and that's great. So just, I think in the order of 40 have come in from people. I don't think we're going to get through all 40. We had to categorize, spend quite a bit of time today just trying to get them organized into different categories. So we're going to go category by category. And so with that, we'll start open with our first category. And now it's really important to bring in Margaret because I am not going to be able to answer those questions. So that's what her job is. So let's bring back in Margaret. And there she is. And let's get her in control. And the first thing we're going to do is we're going to choose the topic of warm-up. That's the first group of questions that come up. So Margaret, I'll read the first question that came in, and it actually has to do with the video title, which is the stretching title on our website. Okay. And as someone who's purchased that and is asking the question, I do the evening stretch routine first thing in the morning. However, is it more beneficial to stretch? Sorry, I do the evening stretch in the morning.
Okay.
And the reader is wondering, is it more beneficial to stretch in the evening? So I'll hand that to you, and I'll come back and I'll throw another question at you. Is that okay?
Sure.
Or do you want me to stick around?
Your choice.
Okay, I'll stick around here. Okay.
You can do whatever you want, honey.
I'll just
okay. All right. So in regards to, if you only have one time to stretch, do the stretch whenever it works for you. I designed the morning stretch routine for all my clients who have over the years said, my knees are kind of stiff in the morning, my hips are stiff in the morning, my back is stiff in the morning. And almost everybody has tight Achilles tendons. And so as a result, they get plantar fasciitis and they get less flexible in their ankles. So my morning stretch routine was really designed around prescriptions that I had created over the years for myself. And I know thousands of other physiotherapists out there have used to help their patients get mobile. So they're more around mobilizing a joint, getting the joint lubricated, getting the joint moving. So that's more the stretching, the morning routine, if you're looking for my morning routine. And for the evening routine, then it is more along the lines of, okay, earlier today I did X, Y, and Z. I need to make sure that, after my strength routine, I might not have had time to stretch. Or after I went for a brisk walk or did hills, I didn't have time to stretch. But now I have time to stretch while I'm watching a little bit of TV. Then, you might have taken a hot shower, warmed up the muscle, done some active isolated stretching first. But that's a good time to then do your static stretches or right after your activity. That's
Very
it.
Good. Okay, so then I'm going to actually group the next two questions together because they're to do with really almost like equipment. Okay, so and I'll stick around for this because then we'll roll into the next one just to keep things moving for people. Okay, so question is working with a roller, which would be like a foam roller, or a yoga tune-up ball. Does that help flexibility?
Yes, so that's one way to do self-massage. That's one way to get blood flowing into the area. As I mentioned in the warm-ups, it's a great way to warm up the muscle. You'll see professional athletes do it. The only thing I recommend is that you be nice to your muscles. So just in the way that I asked you earlier to breathe as you're going through your stretches, if you're rolling your muscles and it's making you go because it's too much pressure or too uncomfortable, make a change. Be it that you use a softer ball, be it that you wear a bigger sweater between the ball and you against the wall, or you put a pillow between you and the foam roller, whatever it is, it should be just like the stretch. It should feel like a delicious massage. So that's really important. Did I
Margaret,
cover? You go ahead.
okay, so do you recommend types of clothing? Carry on with that, certain types of fabric content to keep the body warm and to wear during these flexibility exercises.
So wool is wonderful. So the WW, and it moves well with you. It's flexible, but I do recognize, not everybody has access to, wool clothing. So then it's whatever keeps you warm, but doesn't restrict your motion. And my camera just came off, hon.
Yeah, I know you're frozen there.
No, it's totally black on my end.
Okay, well, you've been frozen, so I'm not too sure what's happened, but I can hear your audio. So I will actually, what shall I do?
Why don't you come down and you ask me the question and come and see if you could figure out the camera while I answer the question.
Okay, we'll get through
Oh, I just lost you, Richard.
here, I'm back.
Okay, can you ask me the question before you go?
Yeah, I'll ask the next question. Actually, the next question goes in. I'm going to switch the topic over to, because we do change gears here. We're going to go to hypermobility because there's been several questions around that
Okay.
came in. And do you recommend the use of a soft brace while doing these exercises for like an ankle, knee brace for stabilization is the question.
Okay, so obviously when that question comes in, that tells me somebody feels that their joints are vulnerable when they're stretching. And then certainly if you've had a knee injury and you're stretching your quadriceps or your hamstrings, and when you're stretching those muscles, you feel like you're putting your joint at risk, then absolutely you should wear a brace. But obviously if the brace is restricting what you actually want to stretch, you shouldn't wear the brace.
Okay. I'm going to ask one question and then I'm going to disappear and I'm going to come down and check on the camera.
No worries.
What's going on.
Thanks.
So the next question is again in the theme of hypermobility. So I'll ask the question and then you'll see me disappear. This is somebody who says, I am super flexible. How can I do stretches safely under that circumstance? And how can I feel as if I'm actually stretching? It's a very good question. Okay,
It is a great question.
yeah.
And so I'm glad that the individual who is hypermobile, they recognize that they're hypermobile. And the thing with hypermobility is these individuals often feel like they want to stretch and it makes them feel good to stretch, but it doesn't necessarily help them. And I say that is that they don't need the flexibility any more than they already have. So if their muscles are tight, then by all means they can stretch their muscles. The hypermobility is around the joint itself. And so with hypermobility, the joint itself is generally the problem. And so that's the issue. Yeah. So we're switching cameras now, and so I'll bring it down. My husband's so brilliant. He always has a solution to a problem. So I'm going to just back up a little bit, and so you guys don't have to see the ceiling lights, and we just switch cameras. Always thinking. One other reason I married him. So, thanks, honey.
Okay, I'm back. Okay, sorry about that. Problem fixed. We're going to go to where for the next topic, which is actually naturally osteoporosis. And there was quite a few questions, and we actually had to break them up into. We had to take osteoporosis, the category, broader category, and create subcategories. So
Okay.
the very first subcategory, and I'll try to lump these questions as best I can. So actually, the first question is, I think I'll take the first question. First question is, are there books or resources you can recommend, Margaret, for helping those of us with osteopenia to know what yoga positions or moves I should avoid. And
Yeah,
so,
all yours.
all mine. So I'm going to do is
You're the marketing.
yes. Well, I don't know if it's marketing, but I'll just turn this off so you can see it. I'll leave it there. I'll actually take you out for a moment. So I'll take this question. Okay, so if you actually go over here to exercise, there's exercise for better bones. We have a book called Yoga for Better Bones, and that was written a number of years ago, and it's got 186 ratings on Amazon. So it's on Amazon worldwide, whether it be the United States, the UK, Australia, all the people who join us. So we recommend that as a starting point for most people. It really does lay out, what are good practices, and it's pretty thorough, and it goes through, what's going on in your body when you do yoga, when you do it correctly or incorrectly, from the point of view of someone who's dealing with osteoporosis. And the other resource I would pop you over to is going back here to again, this is paid, is to go to our yoga series, which is on, if you willing to pay for it. And also we do have workouts that are both Hatha Yoga Season 1, Hatha Yoga Season 2, so workouts at different levels. And we have a Yin Yoga also title for you. And then finally, if you want to just give it a try, you can go back to the videos that we had here, and you'll see, if I type in yoga, there's quite a bit of stuff on yoga. I think we have a number of videos out on yoga, including yoga and osteoporosis. And there's 2 Hatha Yoga workouts that you can try. They're both, about 24, 25 minutes. So there's a bunch of free resources that we make available for people. So to answer your question, what would we recommend? One of those of the above. So I'll take that back out of there, and I'll bring back in Margaret, and there she is.
So thanks, Richard. I actually totally forgot the yin when I was talking about fascial stretching, because that is essentially a yin session or yin routine. The stretches are held 3-4 minutes, sometimes longer, and that is a way of stretching your fascia. So,
Great.
Sorry.
Good. Okay, so that's a nice add-on there. Okay, I'll carry on a few more yoga questions. Is the lotus position, these are all associated with osteoporosis and yoga, so is the lotus position with feet up on thighs safe for those of us with osteoporosis?
Kind of like that crisscross, like almost, crisscross sitting as we would do as a kid. It depends. If somebody is really flexible, they can go into lotus, like crossing their legs, and still maintain an arch in their low back. But if they should do is sit sideways to a mirror, cross their feet, go into lotus or any other yoga position. And if they see that their back is flattening, then that is actually flexion of the lumbar spine. So then they should sit on a block or on a pillow to lift the pelvis slightly forward to make that position safer for them.
Okay, next question is, I am 74. I'm not 74, but the reader's 74. I'm 74. I have osteoporosis, and I've done yoga since my 20s, so been at it for a while. Is it true that I should no longer do any poses that twist or round the spine, including all forward bends?
Sad to say, it is true, but I want to put a caveat on that, is that you want to avoid all of the ones that you're doing, which unfortunately in a yoga practice, generally the weight of your head and your shoulders is on the spine. However, I don't want you to lose the flexibility that you've gained, but I need you to maintain it in a safe way that's not going to promote compression fractures. And one safe way would be lying totally on your side and then being able to go into a flexed posture. And also there are some gentle sideline or supine and side lying stretches that can take you into rotation. But when you have the axial loading, such as sitting, it's already compressive on your spine, and then you rotate on top of it. Oftentimes we don't realize that we have a compression fracture, and there are some models that have been created just comparing somebody with one single compression fracture, which most people that have a compression fracture don't even know they have it. So I would assume at 74, if you have osteoporosis, you have one at some level in your spine. Albeit because when they're only less than 20%, they generally don't even mention it to you. And so doing a rotation puts added force through the spine and is setting you up for another fracture, because the forces on the spine above and below that vertebrae are just skewed because of the compression, and therefore, yes, I would, sorry to say, change my practice significantly.
Okay. Yeah, you packed a lot in there, and
Sorry.
I think that's part of the journey of being with us, and certainly with you, that you educate people along the way, and we try to provide as many resources for people to learn this. I know you packed a lot in there in a few moments,
Sorry.
but
Okay.
I think the book and those other resources cover some of that stuff.
Okay, I'll look at the time and I'll try to keep it to a minute, no more. Okay. Next
Okay.
question.
I never know how far to go with I never know how far to go with back extensions. I do not have pain and I'm quite flexible. How far can one go with a minus 3.4, it's a T-score, bone mineral density result? And so I don't know if you can do that in a minute.
Yeah, it's a very low T-score, and the recommendation is not to go past a sphinx. A sphinx is when you're laying on your tummy and your forearms are on the ground, and so it's just a light arch. And the reason for that is that although we talk about compression fractures in the vertebral body of the spine, when you look at x-rays, you will see compression or fractures of the bony bits in the back when people go into too much extension. So I wouldn't go too far.
Right. We're still within osteoporosis, but we're leaving yoga, and now we're going actually into the bending forward, and which people are subject to when they put on their footwear, whether it be the socks or their boots and their shoes, and something that's day-to-day life. So there's 3 or 4 questions around that, and I'll try to. How do you safely put on socks? It seems just the movement is contrary to everything about the do's and don'ts of body bending and twisting. P.S. I'm glad I found you, Margaret. So that's someone wondering, like, how do I do this without compromising my
So
spine?
one of the reasons we work on our flexibility is to be able to hinge forward and be able to reach down with a flat back. If you're not able to do that, then there are sock aids. If you go to a medical supply store, there are aids that they're very clever, and anyways, and it's too much with just a sock aid. It will help you get your socks on safely. And in regards to shoes and not tying them up, we have a little stuff going on elastic laces. Stuff going on is that we did a YouTube video, and elastic laces and a long shoehorn, life is good.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I remember that video. I was in that video. Okay, so now we'll actually move on, because that covered, I think, the other questions that were there, but they converge around that. So next thing is really limitations in terms of flexibility. Again, this is associated with people who are subject to the condition of osteoporosis. So limitations, what type of flexibility exercises should one avoid? If you have a lumbar score, that's obviously in the lumbar area, of minus 5.4 as a T-score.
Well, it's extremely low. So absolutely, so the lumbar area, if you place your hands on your pelvis and you bring your fingers together, that is your 5th lumbar generally. And so that lower back segment, you certainly, absolutely, with a score like that, want to avoid flattening the spine. So anything that brings you into that forward. You want to avoid side bends, and I would try to avoid rotations. Those motions, if you're going to do them without gravity and without the weight. So that means if you look at my exercise or my stretching section in Exercise for Better Bones, they're all safe for you regardless of your bone density scores.
Yeah, and I think that gets to the next question, which I was going to, is the flip question on basically, I have pretty serious osteoporosis in my spine with 3 smallish compression fractures. Which flexibility exercises would be best for someone in my situation? And I think you've addressed that, or just maybe you want to reiterate that message. Yeah.
Section are the ones I recommend. If they're not in this section, it's because I don't recommend them.
Okay. Okay, I'm going to bring up, this question is very, very specific. I've been doing the Eccentrics program with Miranda White, for a while. And she echoes the same recommendation as you. Do you know her classical stretch program on public TV? And check it out. I recommend if you agree. So I guess the person's asking is this or any other of the other people out there promoting stretches or whatever they're doing.
Yep.
What are your thoughts on that? And cautions for people who are not cautions. How should they approach these?
Yep. No. So a lot of great hearts out there, but a lot of misguided recommendations. One of the reasons I started creating my videos after people had asked me is I looked at her video, and although I liked 90% of it, especially the one that she had specifically for osteoporosis, she was still doing unsafe moves. And I just went, okay, I've had it. I'm making my own videos. So I guess I should thank her. Otherwise, I never would have started my videos. But please, if you guys are watching videos outside of my videos, because I only know what I create and I know it's safe, but if you're watching other videos, you have to be your own boss of your body. Don't listen to your personal trainer. Don't listen to your yoga instructor. You have to take control. You're the only person that's going to have to live with your compressions.
Okay. So now it's time we're going to actually leave the domain or the category of osteoporosis, and this is a bunch of questions that came in about body specific questions and flexibility and activity specific questions. So we'll go to those for you, and again you'll see body parts show up here. So I'd like to know more about back stretches. What is a recommendation for stretching your back after sleeping? They're very specific, and also lower back for more flexibility, stretches for lower back injuries, et cetera, et cetera. There's a bunch of them together. So there you go.
Okay. Well, actually, I'm glad it came up, because one of the stretches I did not put in my book, and after I said my last statement about, you should only do what I did in the book, is, that book is like 12 years old or so. And so the back stretches that are great, in order to stretch your back, you need to be able to bring your knee up towards your chest and your chest towards your knee. That's going to help stretch the back. If you don't have any concern over your disc or your bones, then you can do that in any position you want, in sitting, in standing, lying on your back, heart's content, knees towards your chest. But if you have osteoporosis, it is really imperative that you do that on your side.
Okay. The next question was, I have very tight hamstrings. How can I make them more flexible?
So I would suggest you watch my YouTube on stretching your hamstrings, because I explain it in about 10 minutes, because there's lots of little steps and we don't have time to cover that right now. Okay. So Richard will put it in the description box, or now you know how to search for it. You could just put stretching hamstrings.
There you go. Margaret, we hear a lot these days about stretching of your psoas. What is the best way to stretch that area?
Yeah, so the psoas is a hip flexor, and we have two parts of the psoas. One is attached at the spine, one at the hip. We hear about it all the time because people spend too much time sitting, and we had so much chronic psoas tightness with COVID, and now with winter coming in on top of it. So best way to stretch it is simply by placing one foot on a chair or bench, a step. And for somebody who's really, really tight, this is sufficient. I'm standing straight on one foot, the other foot is up. And if I tighten my butt, that's going to help relax the muscle in front. And if the higher I bring the opposite foot and go forward, the bigger the stretch I'm going to get. So that's the best and easiest way to stretch it. There are ways you could do it kneeling and side lying, but that's probably the easiest.
Okay. Now we're going to move on to some activities. First one is, what are the best stretches to do after hiking or long walks?
So depending on the surface you're hiking on, so especially if you're doing a lot of hills, you're using your calf and your soleus muscles more. So you definitely want to do some nice static stretching of those. And if you are doing especially a lot of downhill hiking, then your quads are going to be like, needing big time stretching. And so those, and if it's after, then that's your time to do a nice static stretch. So, in an ideal world, you finish your hike, you go into a hot tub and your muscles are nice and warm, and then, or at least take a hot shower. If you have time between after your hike and the time that you actually do your stretch, even if it's just a half an hour, then you need to warm up the muscle again and just give it a nice long stretch.
Okay. If I can add something to that, just add it here. I'll remove this, just some visibility. But if you go to the YouTube channel, Mark's YouTube channel, you'll see walking for exercise, and you'll see warm-ups, both beginner and advanced, and also walking stretches, as well as posture. So there's a whole series on walking that we've done. And here's your shoelaces one, by the way, for people who want to tie their shoes safely, right there. So easily accessible. Let's get rid of that. Okay, back to the body activity, and I'll go to the next question. Okay, this person's asking how to prepare for climbing 600 stairs up and down without severe calf pain in the next few days.
Yeah, so if they're having a severe pain in the next few days, it's not generally because of tightness, but rather weakness. They haven't prepared the calf muscle for that activity well enough. And so I would highly recommend they look at, or even if they're not senior, the #1 exercise for seniors, because I walk them through all the progressions of strengthening their calf so that they can happily do their 600 steps. And I did the CN Tower years ago, so I know what I'm talking about. Okay.
Okay. Okay. And then the final question on the body part that needs to be stretched, or someone wants to have stretch, is how can I stretch my stomach?
So again, if they mean the stomach as an organ, then we're talking visceral mobilization. If they just mean that, oh wow, when I lie down, I feel like, oh, it's stretch. How do I get more of a stretch? Then it's how do you take your body from being in a neutral position into an extended position? And ideally would be to start just laying flat on your back, and then laying flat on your back with a pillow underneath, and then with maybe 2 pillows underneath. And eventually, depending on your condition, how old you are and how safe it feels for you, to lie over an exercise ball that's maybe bigger than the normal one that you would use for exercise. So if you're 5'2" like myself, instead of a 55 centimeter ball, you could start at a 75 and then work to a 65 and then a 55 centimeter ball. As the ball gets smaller, the stretch gets more intense. That's all.
Okay. Let's move then to the general questions, and we have a few more
3 minutes.
left. Oh, 3 minutes left, okay. The first one is abdominal and pelvic adhesions that are a result of a long ago surgery, Margaret. Does the fascia in these areas, ever fully heal? And are there appropriate stretches for them?
Yes, so the fascia has been traumatized. And as I mentioned, you want to look for a therapist that has visceral mobilization skills that will help you to release those adhesions.
Okay. What causes cramping, Margaret, and what can we do about it?
I think I covered that at the beginning.
Okay. And then the final one, and I actually might pull in someone because some people are putting in questions on the chat, and I'll try to get them in if we have another minute or so. But this one is the last one that came in from our email list. I'm having trouble doing lunges. Do you have any suggestions, Margaret?
Yes. So most people will tell me they hate to do lunges because their knees feel horrible. It's not because they don't have the strength to do the lunge, is they don't have the flexibility in their hip flexor or their quadricep. And so and then the other thing is they often have trigger points. So this is where the massage comes in. And if you have any trigger points, and so you can look up rolling your quads with a rolling pin or rolling your quads with a foam roller. I cover both. And then when you have no more tenderness in your muscles, then you will be much happier to be able to do a stretch and go, oh, my quad's happy. So then make sure you have the flexibility in the quadricep, in the hip flexor, and then the lunge is not going to be nearly as traumatic for you. And I would start with a reverse lunge before a forward lunge.
Okay. Can I put one more out there that's come in from the chat?
Sure.
This is, you haven't had time to prepare, but actually this was someone you were working with, not this person, but you worked on this problem recently. Okay. From Jenny, what stretches do you recommend for severe plantar fasciitis, where sometimes I can hardly walk, but don't involve forward bending because of a DEXA score in the -5.4 range?
Yeah, so plantar fasciitis doesn't need any forward bending. I would definitely work on stretching both the calf muscle the soleus muscle and the plantar fascia. And so we did a video, Richard, remember, on massage and stretching for the feet.
Yeah.
So that's the one, Jenny, that you'll want. And we'll either put it in the description box, or I don't know if there is a way of getting it to her, sending her the link. But
let's put it in the description box, because we're going to contact with
thank you.
But
Okay.
again, I think it's in one of the playlists that's already in there. There's a number of things in the description box.
Okay, good luck with that. And do your stretch, Jenny, before you get out of bed in the morning. Really important, you know. So make sure you do your dorsiflexion. This is you're lying down, your feet point, flex, at least 20 times. And then when you first get out of bed, stand for at least 30 seconds and put some supportive footwear on before you take your first step. Okay.
And I think we can wrap up now. There are some other questions on the chat, and we apologize. We try our best to keep up with all the questions. We try our best to keep up with the comments and questions on our channel, but we have so many, and we really want to help everybody we can, but it's just a question of keeping up. And so we try to produce and cover material. So we see questions come in, we try to answer them in a video so that everybody can benefit from it. So I can just add that, because I did see a comment on someone saying we're not responsive to comments or questions on our channel, and it's just with the size of our channel and our audience, unfortunately, what comes with that privilege is the inability sometimes, or the challenges of keeping up with people. But I just want to honestly say we do try our best for everybody. I'll hand it to Margaret if you just want to wrap it up and close it for people and thank them.
Yes, so I know Richard often brings sad comments to my attention, but I want to thank all of you for all your wonderful comments, and take this time to wish you safe and restful holiday, and stay well. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you very much, everybody.